All right. Good afternoon, everyone. We are going to give everyone some time to just get logged in, get situated, get everything organized. If you guys want, you can drop where you guys are tuning in from in the chat right now. Would love to see where everyone is hanging out, and we'll get started with Becky, who's currently on with us. Hi, Becky. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I think you're muted.
I also can't share my screen.
Do I need to see? Yeah, Becky, I'm just sharing my screen right now, and then I'll have you, just so that we can have this first, and then I'll give you the floor after.
Sounds good.
Alrighty. So I'll give everyone a little bit more time to get in, and we'll get started in just a second.
No, Bonnie, you won't have to be able to share your screen. You're welcome. So we've got Wisconsin. Bonnie, where are you from? We have Malone. Hi, Kayla. Fargo, North Dakota. Hi, Bonnie. Hi, Laura. Deborah from Connecticut. Julie, Illinois. Mansfield, Ohio. Hi, Christy. Hi, Julie. Oh, it's moving faster. New Jersey, Utah, Massachusetts, DeKalb, New York, Malone, New Jersey. What grade level, ladies, gentlemen? Third, second. K8
Audio issues. So I heard your lips moving, Becky, but couldn't hear you at all. Now I can.
Oh, good, good.
Technology.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we'll give it a little bit longer. We can start in a couple minutes.
So as we're waiting to start, let me just talk briefly and tell you that I'm really excited to, first of all, share this today. I think that what you're going to get out of this is going to be helpful to you. You'll be able to use it in your homes. You'll be able to use it in your schools. You'll be able to use it if, unfortunately, we continue to be distance learning. You'll also be able to use it right in your classrooms with students. You can use it over Zoom. So it's pretty flexible. A lot of what you're going to see today, I think you'll be able to take into a variety of different settings. If you're a mom or a dad, you'll be able to take it into your home and play it with your children there as well. Looks like we have a wide variety of grade levels, everything from pre-K up to, looks like grade 8. And we've got teachers, instructional support coaches, ESL teachers, math specialists, classroom teachers, interventionalists. So a good variety.
Love to see that.
Me too. That's great.
And everyone from all over, which is good to see as well.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. All right, so maybe we can give it one more minute and then we can get started. I'll go over some house rules first and then I'll pass it off to Becky. So we'll just see if a couple people more trickle in. Awesome, we've got some good numbers, lots of attendees today, which is great to see.
And when you're typing in the chat, if you want everyone to see what you're saying, make sure you go to that little drop down where it says all panelists and change it to all panelists and attendees. And that way everyone can see. Otherwise, if you just want us to see, you can send it to that, but you'll hear more about that as we continue as well. But you may want to change that drop down menu to all panelists and attendees.
All right, so I think we have a good number of people in here. As more people kind of trickle in, they can get the information after the fact from the start if they need. So we can get started with today. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you guys are joining us from. My name is Ashley, and I work with Didax. So happy to have you guys on this webinar with us today and having Becky take over and inform us on some fun games that you guys can use virtual or in your classrooms whenever we can get back in there. And she'll also go over her game that she created and we are selling at Didax, which is Sum It Up. So we are very excited to have her. Quickly, I'm just going to go through a few house rules. So I know Becky was kind of explaining the chat, ways that you guys can use that. So if you want to show it to everyone and the panelists, make sure to use that arrow button down by your chat to determine who is actually seeing it. And then we are going to do some Q&A. So we're going to try to, answer your questions throughout the webinar if you have them. If we can't answer everything right away, we'll be sure to follow up with those answers. We'll also try to find some time at the end of the webinar to highlight a few of those answers. So make sure you use that Q&A tab for those questions. And then Becky is going to have some engaging questions throughout for some of the games that she's actually playing. So definitely utilize the chat button there so that you guys can participate in those game questions. And we will be having a contest and we are going to give away a Sum It Up game to one lucky winner who is participating in those questions that Becky is asking. So that is just some of those house rules of using Chat QA. A reminder that you'll see on my screen right here is we do have 20% off the Sum It Up game. So, if you decide you want to purchase after listening to this, and being able to utilize the games that she provided with the actual Sum It Up game, you can use that code that's listed at the bottom. We'll also follow up with an email to everyone with that code again and the right link so you guys can purchase that easily. And so without further ado, I'm just going to introduce you guys to Becky Duprey. She developed Sum It Up and some of the other fun games that you guys will learn today that you can use with your students. She created these games as a way to engage struggling learners. Becky taught math in the public schools for 8 years. She's been teaching math methods for 21 years and has been an independent consultant for 18 years. So I'm going to stop my share screen right now. I'm going to pass it off to Becky so that she can take over and she can share with you guys all the fun games she's created today.
I still can't share my screen, Ashley.
I have to do that. All right. Let me know if you can do it now.
Got it, thanks.
Perfect.
So as Ashley said, I created Sum It Up, and I want to share with you a lot of different games that you can play either with the tiles that come with Sum It Up, or if you don't have Sum It Up, you can also use various other materials, and I'll talk to you about that as well. So let me just start by asking you, are your students still counting, either counting all or counting on their fingers? And if they are, this is a normal thing for children to do when they're first learning addition, but eventually we're hoping to bring them to fluency. So the hope is to get them to have enough practice so that they can become fluent in those addition facts. As far as math fluency goes, NCTM says fluency really means students are accurate, they're efficient, but it's beyond that. They also have to be really flexible with their numbers. They have to be able to see the number 6, not just as being the numeral 6, but as a 3 and a 3, a 4 and a 2, a 5 and a 1. Maybe it's a 2, a 2 and a 2. So they've got to be able to really be flexible with their numbers. And in doing that, they develop a really deep number sense. So the goal is to really develop a math fluency for our students where they have all of these pieces. They're accurate, they're efficient, they're flexible, and they have number sense. So the question is, how do we do this? How do we build fluency? And my solution, when I found that I was having some difficulty, and actually it was my grandchildren I was working with, and I found that they were struggling, and I knew that flashcards weren't going to cut it, and doing additional work that they did while they were in school didn't cut it. So what I did is I started to investigate some games that we could play, and then they wanted to practice, and as they practiced, they became more fluent, they became flexible, they really developed a deep number sense. So let's take a look at some of those games. The first game I want to talk about is a game called Target, and at the end of this webinar, you will receive Target. Target is a file that you can use either in your classroom or via the web if you're still on Zoom. And with Target, what you're doing is you're really working on the facts of those Make 10 facts. So students will see a target. And if you're really brave and you want to use a koosh ball in your smartboard, you could have them throw a koosh ball at your smartboard and hit one of those target areas. If you're not one of those brave people, you can have them go up and simply touch one of those places on the target. So for example, if a student were to touch this red star, an equation comes up, 6 plus blank equals 10. They answer the problem. You can ask them about how they figured it out, what was their thinking, how did they know the answer was 4, and then they have success. You go back to the target. They could hit another one, and you'll notice here that the missing addend is in the other place. So now it's blank something plus 2 is equal to 10. They have to figure out what that something is. But I also made sure to include equations that look like this. 10 equals 3 plus blank, because it used to be that students would look at the equal sign as here comes the answer. And really we need to see that missing addend on both sides of the equal sign. So playing target, it's just a matter of every time you hit this success, it brings you back to the target. Every time you hit one of these stars, it brings you out to one of the equations. And as I said, that's a file that you'll be receiving at the close of this. With Make It Count. Make It Count, you can see I've used all the tiles. Now, I use tiles because these tiles came from the Sum It Up game. So these are all games that you can play with Sum It Up, but if you don't have the game, it doesn't mean you can't play Make It Count. You could use playing cards, and with those playing cards, take all the face cards out, and you've got what you need to put in the pile. So you lay all the numbers, number side up, and a player, you can play it one of two ways. You can either play it the slow way where students are just beginning their fluency and you take turns, one player at a time. And if we're playing it one player at a time, the first player is going to reach into that pile and they're going to grab tiles that give you a sum, in this case, a sum of 10. So you can see the player might reach in and grab a 4, and a 6, because 4 plus 6 equals 10. And then they place them at the bottom part of their play space so that they can easily look back and see 4 plus 6 is equal to 10. And they can check it later on. And then they go ahead and they grab for another. Or if, like I said, if you're playing so that you're going around the table, the next player would reach in and grab their tiles that would add to give you 10. So this player is playing solo and reached in, grabbed a 7, and now grabbing a 3. And you can see that they're laid out very nicely so that you can look back and see that 4 plus 6 gives me 10, 7 plus 3 gives me 10. I always start out playing this game by not giving any real rules as to how many add-ins they have to have. Because some student at one point or another is going to reach in and do something like this. They grab the 1, they grab the 3, they grab the 4, and then they grab the 2, because 1 plus 3 plus 4 plus 2 is equal to 10. And that's when students say, oh, can we do that? And the answer, my answer is always, well, is the sum equal to 10? It is, so absolutely we can do it. So when you're first playing this game, like I said, you could go around the table and take turns doing this. And then eventually, once they become more fluent and they're feeling a lot more comfortable with it, you can play it in more of a frenzy kind of style. All the tiles are laid between them. You say go, and then they reach as quickly as they can to grab those sums of 10 and put them in front of themselves. The important thing here is to make sure that the people that are placed around the table when you're doing it in the frenzy kind of way are all relatively close in level. You certainly don't want somebody who's struggling paired up with somebody who's pretty fluent already. So it can be played both ways. And that's just with the sums of 10. But you can play this game with sums of 20, difference being the tiles or the numbers that are in the middle of your table are the numbers 1 through 19. And now what we're doing is we're reaching in and making sums of 20. You can play sums of 100. All of the tiles this time are all the tiles 5 through 95, and they're all multiples of 5. And they're making sums of 100. You can also play it with decimals, and you could use the decimal tiles from Sum It Up. Or again, you could put these numbers on index cards and put those in the middle of your table. And you're looking for sums of 1 in this case. And then using the fraction tiles, these fraction tiles are from the Sum It Up game. We're looking at the fractional units of halves, fourths, eighths, and sixteenths. But if you wanted to start it out so that students weren't struggling, if they're just using common denominators, you could just put the tiles in the center that all have the common fractional unit and have them practice that way first. Introduce a second fractional unit, then introduce a third one, introduce a fourth one, until they're able to play with halves, fourths, eighths, and sixteenths. What this has really done for my granddaughter is she now can add these fractional units in her head, and she's very quick at it. She's definitely fluent, and it all comes from this practice, the continued practice in playing the game. You could also play it with the integer version. Now with the integers, the tiles or the numbers that you'd want to put in the middle of the table here are from -9 to +9. And the difference in this particular game is you start out by giving a target number that they're trying to build the sum of. You can see in this slide, the target number was -7. So every time they reached into the center of the table, they were drawing tiles that were equal to a -7. So if you were to take a look at this particular game at this point, what tiles would you grab next to make your sum of -7? Okay, good. So there's a variety of answers. You can see that students would grab whatever their mind sees, whatever they see as being a -7. So we've looked at target, we've looked at make it count. The next game we're going to look at is called It's Impossible. With It's Impossible, this again is the 10 version. So all you're going to use, if you don't have the tiles, you're using numbers 1 through 9. And you could, again, could remove those face cards from the playing cards and randomly select 5 cards. And what I did is I randomly selected 5 tiles. Once you've randomly selected those 5 tiles, the first thing you need to do is identify what's the smallest sum you can make out of those tiles. Well, the smallest sum would be 2 plus 1. So the smallest sum is 3. What's the largest sum you can make from those tiles? Many people want to initially say, oh, it's 6 plus 6. But what we have to consider is we can use more than 2 add-ins. So the largest sum is 19. So now that we've got our smallest sum and our largest sum identified, that's when we get the game board now set. So those are the 5 numbers that we're using. The game board's going to include all of the numbers 3 through 19. Because 3 was my smallest sum, 19 was my largest sum. And this is now where the game, it's more of a fluency kind of game. It's a speed game. And what we're going to do is we're going to race to try to find ways to make all of these numbers using just those 5 add-ins. And it's all addition at this point. Now, later on, if you wanted to in grade 5, 6, 7, 8, you could bring in multiple operations. You could let them use a variety of operations. But the way I play it is all you can do is add. So if we're looking to we have to make each one of these numbers just through addition, I can make 3, 2 plus 1. Can I make 4? If you look at it, some people might say, well, yeah, you could make 4, just put a 4 in there. But keep in mind, we need 2 add-ins to make an addition sentence. There is no 0 there, so I cannot put a 4 up there unless I had a 0. So 4 is impossible, and that's why the game is called It's Impossible. Can I make a 5? I could make a 5 with a 4 and a 1. How about a 6? A 2 and a 4? How would you make a 7? Some of you might say, I'm going to make a 7 with a 6 and a 1. Others might say, I'll make a 7 differently. I'll use a 2, a 1, and a 4. So I want you to try this game for a little bit. I want to know, are there any other numbers that are impossible? Can you make an 8? Can you make a 9? Can you make a 10? Go ahead, type it right into the chat. What numbers can you make? What ones do you think are impossible? What are you finding? And what you'll find as you continue is they're all possible. You can make all of the others. The only impossible one in this particular game is the number 4. So you can play It's Impossible with numbers up to 10, but you could also use the 20 tiles. So again, those are the tiles 1 through 19, and you identify the smallest and the largest, and you're making all the numbers in between using just addition, but later on you could choose to use multiplication and division as well. You could use the 100 tiles, and with the 100 tiles, again, you find the smallest sum and your largest sum, but now all the numbers in between are just the multiples of 5. Use the decimal tiles and find the smallest and largest, and just like with the 100 tiles, the decimal tiles are also your multiples of 5. So we've got 15 hundredths, then they'd have to find 2 tenths, 25 hundredths, 3 tenths, etc., until they get to 85 hundredths. Using the fraction tiles, again, the fraction tiles are pulled out. You identify the smallest and the largest, and then they have to find all the numbers in between. And a good way to do it is to identify the smallest fractional unit in your setup. So you know that a 16th is the smallest unit in those tiles that are listed. So I'm going to find every 16th in between 3/16 and 23/16 and find if they're possible or impossible. And then again, with the integer tiles, The thing that students need to be aware of is to find the smallest tile or the smallest sum in this one. They only are looking at their negative numbers to get their smallest sum. And then to get their largest sum, they're only looking at their positive numbers to get their largest sum. So we're now looking at numbers from -10 to 5 and trying to get all the numbers in between. And it's impossible. Next thing we're going to talk about is a game called So You Think You Can Add. And this particular game was created by my granddaughter. With So You Think You Can Add, what you're going to do is, again, these are the tiles from the game, but you could use index cards. Make sure that they're cut into squares. Initially, you're grabbing 10 numbers, and these are the numbers 1 through 9, and I randomly took 10 of them. As soon as every player has those 10 tiles, the game starts. And again, this is a speed game. And what students are going to do, or players are going to do, is they're going to rush to try to put those tiles in a cross number configuration so that all the sums are equal to 10. So you can see that's what I did here. I have 1 plus 5 plus 1 plus 3 is equal to 10. And then my 7 plus 3, which is horizontal, is also 10. The 4, 3, and 3 is equal to 10. And the 4 plus 4 plus 2 is equal to 10. As soon as a player is able to use all of their 10 tiles and put them into cross number configuration, that's when they say draw. And at that point, they, as well as everyone else playing the game, has to draw 2 tiles. So I drew a 6 and a 5. Can you see where you might put the 6 and the 5? Because the goal at this point is to go ahead and put those 2 tiles into your configuration if you can. And so that 6 and that 5 were rather easy to put into the configuration. And as soon as the tiles are placed and that player's ready again, that player can say draw. And then again, that player, as well as every other player playing the game, has to draw 2 more tiles. This time I drew a 1 and a 2. Can you see where I might put a 1 and a 2? And this is where the game really focuses in on that flexibility, because now students have to look at their configuration and ask themselves, can I reconfigure anywhere? And what would be the easiest way to do it so that I can fit the 1 and the 2 in there? Any ideas what you might do? Remember, you can move your tiles. So I'll give you a bit of a hint as to what I did. I removed the 6. Can you see what I might have done? So I put the 6 up next to the 1. So 1 plus 6 plus 1 plus 2 is equal to 10. And then I would be able to say draw again. So again, this really helps students with their fluency. And what they do is they're continually adding, as opposed to, you know, the groans you get when you pass out a worksheet. You don't get the groans when you say, do you want to play this game? Because they like it, they enjoy it. You can play it with the sums of 20 as well. So again, you're starting with those 10 tiles and you're making cross number configurations so that the sums are 20. You can play it with the 100 tiles and making cross number configurations so that your sums are equal to 100. You can play it with the fraction tiles. And again, a lot of flexibility comes in here because students really start to think about what are these fractional values? What are they equivalent to? And so they're making sums of 1. Using the decimal tiles, they're also making sums of 1. And then with the integer tiles, you just started out by saying, okay, this particular game, we're going to make sums of, choose a number, and that way now all the sums have to equal that particular number for that game. The next round, you might choose a different sum. So you can see you're able to play all of these games with all the different number sets. The rules don't change, just the number sets change. The next game is odds or evens. With odds or evens, this game actually was created by my other granddaughter, and it runs very much like So You Think You Can Add game. You start out with your 10 tiles. Once you've got your 10 tiles, the caller for the game, and you take turns being the caller calls out either odds or evens. And if they call out odds, then all the sums in the cross number configuration have to be equal to an odd number. And if they call out evens, all the sums in the cross number configurations have to be even numbers. So you can see evens was called, and all of the sums are equal to an even number. They're not the same even number, they're all different, but they are all even numbers. I'll tell you, when I played this with my granddaughter, I was much faster than her, of course, and she said, "Grandma, that's not fair. How are you doing it so fast?" I said, "I'm not going to tell you how I'm doing it. I'm just going to tell you I don't look at the total sum. I'm only looking at my add-ins and comparing those, and that's how I know what to put where." As soon as she saw that, she said, "Okay, game on." And she played, and she was speedy after that. She was quite good. So she really picked up that number theory of an odd number plus an odd number makes an even plus an even makes an even, but an odd plus an even makes an odd. And she came up with it on her own. So this was beautiful for her. You can also play it with the 20 tiles. Again, it's just odds or evens, or the 100 tiles, odds or evens. The integer tiles, you're still playing just odds or evens. You've got to pay attention now to those signs and think a little bit more as you're doing the addition. With the fraction and decimal tiles, instead of playing odds or evens, we play more than or less than 1. And in both of these cases, these are games that were less than 1. And this is really quite a powerful way to get students to start estimating with fractions and decimals. There's a lot of research out there that shows that students really struggle with estimation when it comes to decimals and fractions. Again, going back to my granddaughter, she is very, very quick at estimating fractions, and it all comes just from gameplay. So definitely worth working on. The last game I want to talk to you about is Sum It Up. And Sum It Up, as Ashley talked about in the beginning, you can either get the sums of 10, 20, and 100 in one box, or in the other box, it's fractions, decimals, and integers. And in each box, you also get 3 game boards. So not only do you have the tiles for each game, you have 3 game boards. So you could have 3 games played simultaneously, which means it's really good for centers, as are all the other games that we just talked about. So you might choose to just use the tiles at one center, the game board at another center, or you might differentiate by using the 100 tiles at one center, the 20s at another, and the 10s at another. This is what Sum It Up looks like. The game board has blue squares, red squares, and green squares, in addition to the play squares, the white ones. What you do is you start out by randomly placing a green tile on a green square, a blue tile on a blue square, and a red tile on a red square. Once you get the game set up, now you're ready to play. Now the reason you're doing that is every single time you set the game up, it's going to be set up differently. So you're never going to play the same game twice. It's always going to look different, which means it just keeps the excitement going. So once the game is set up, it's now the player's turn to use their yellow tiles, and each player has 5 yellow tiles to start with. And the player has to take their tile. In this particular version, it's the Sum It Up for sums of 10. I'm going to put my tile underneath the 8, because if you remember, if you see on this game board, right underneath the 8 is a plus 10 cell. And that's a bonus cell, so the student or the player would get 10 extra points if they placed it under the 8 as opposed to next to the 8. Or players might get a little smarter and realize that they could put an 8 right next to their 2, because all of their tiles have to be either vertically or horizontally. So all of their yellow tiles that they put on the board have to be in a horizontal or a vertical fashion. However, in this case, those horizontal tiles of the 8 and the 2 happen to butt up against the green tile that was on the board. So I've got two different sums of 10, and both of those sums of 10 hit that bonus cell. So that's a pretty good play. Now, if the player was really lucky and got some tiles that were all lower, the student might do something like this. Because if they're able to play all 5 tiles at the same time, they get a 30-point bonus added to their play. So this would give them additional 30 points to their score. So this is an excellent play, and all the scoring is explained in the game. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the scoring, but this particular play is one of the best plays you can make. What happens is students will start to hoard their smaller tiles because they really want to be able to do this. Often they hoard them so long that the game board is locked up by the time they're able to play it, but they're thinking, and that's what's important. So here's some tiles. You have a 2, a 1, a 2, a 1, and a 4. This is your game board. Where are you going to put your tiles? Go ahead, type it right in the chat. Where do you think you might want to put your tiles? Anybody think about doing this? When your tiles are all low, you really want to try to get them all on the game board at once. And in looking at these tiles, they equaled 10. So I knew I could, and I could pair them up. So here I have 3 sums of 10, plus I've put all my tiles on the game board. So that's a really good play as well. So you can play sums of 10 with Sum It Up. And there's a worked on board. It's not quite completed. You could play Sum It Up with sums of 20. You could play Sum It Up with sums of 100. And as I said, the 10, the 20, and the 100 all come in the same box, and you get 3 game boards as well. Or you could play Sum It Up with fractions. And this is my granddaughter's favorite. You could play Sum It Up with decimals, or you could play Sum It Up with integers. Now with the integer version, what happens is the first tile you draw at the beginning of each one of your plays becomes the sum that you're going to play for that particular play. So as you're looking at the board, you're saying, ooh, they're not all the same sum. That's because the sum changes every single time. So you're never trying to make just the same sum as you move through. And just like the others, you can get the fractions, decimals, and integers all in the same box, and the 3 game boards as well. So I've shared quite a bit with you. I haven't been able to look at the chat box, so I don't know what's been said. I was busy talking. What kinds of questions have come up, or?
Yeah, so I can help you, Becky. I've kind of been looking through some of them. I've been answering some throughout, but I will definitely bring some up. So at the beginning, I know we had a question about the target game.
Yes.
Someone was asking if you needed to have a smart board for that game.
Absolutely not. You do not need a smart board. You can play it. It's a PowerPoint. So you could simply field the question, the place that you wanted to click. You could ask the student, where do you want to go? And you could click on it.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
Another couple questions trickle through. Lindsay, she asked if there will be a PDF made available with the rules of all the games that you went through besides it.
I can definitely do that. I have that, Ashley. If would it be best for me to send it to you so that it can be sent out with Target?
Yep, exactly. That'd be perfect.
Okay, sure.
And then let's see, we had another question. Oh, now I can't find it. Let me see, we have some trickling in right now. Deborah asked, what did you mean that the sum would be different? Don't all sums make 10?
In the integer version, your sums are going to be different because you're only looking at sums equal to 10 when you're playing with sum it up sums of 10. With sum it up sums of 20, your sums are all equal to 20. The 100, they're all equal to 100. Fractions and decimals are always equal to 1. The sum it up integer version, your sum is always different. It's always the first tile that you draw. So if you draw a -6 first, then you're going to make a sum of -6 for your first play. Then if you draw a -2 to replace those tiles, and that's your first tile you draw, your next play, you'll make a sum of -2.
Awesome, thank you. We have another question from Amanda. She's asking, can you or have you used Sum It Up with kindergartners?
I actually have. And when I do it with kindergartners, I always start, first of all, you don't take score. I just let them go ahead and make the sums of 10. Secondly, if you use base 10 blocks or a 10 frame with them so that they can visually see those sums of 10 as they're making the sums, it works much better. And of course, some students are going to catch on much quicker than others, but yes, I've played it with kindergartners, small groups, and definitely using manipulatives with them.
Perfect, that's good to hear. Let's see. Amanda says thank you. She loves to challenge to 20 for her kindergartners.
Wonderful.
Let's see, we have Bonnie is asking if the game boards are available via computer if we wanted to play with Zoom, which we don't have these digitally available. So I don't know if you have any ideas and ways to get creative.
The game that I play via Zoom, I play, so you think you can add via Zoom, but of course that does mean that the people on the other end do need to have the tiles as well. But you can play It's Impossible via Zoom, Target via Zoom. But as far as playing Sum It Up via Zoom at this point, not yet. Maybe eventually, that would be great.
I know, right? That would be nice with all the remote learning that's going on.
Yes.
So Laura asked, can you start small with younger grades, just assembling tiles without adding the extra 10 points? So I think it's kind of piggybacking off the question Amanda had somewhat.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I didn't take score with a lot of students when I first started out. I just went ahead and, excuse me, I just went ahead and played and let them play. Matter of fact, some children chose to come and play the game solo. They didn't even want me there with them. They just wanted to keep making tens. So no scoring was necessary. But yeah, absolutely you can play without taking score. And I would encourage that at the younger grades.
Yeah. I think we have maybe one more question. And it's, looks like we have two more. So someone is asking how many tiles are in each group. I'm not sure if that means in each game specifically. It looks like it's from CMS is the one that asked that question. So maybe we can wait to see if there's a follow-up on that one before we answer.
Sure.
And then Amanda, we have a question from her asking, boys against girls might encourage those little K girls more. Oh, might not have been necessarily a question. Yeah, so I think that might be it. If we hear back from CMS on the tiles, how many tiles are in each group, we can answer that question once it's a little bit more specified. And then if anyone else has any more questions that they want to put in. Okay, so this person is saying, just wondered how many groups of, for example, 1 to 9.
Are you talking about which game are we talking about? So you think you can add?
Sum it up.
For Sum It Up. You have more tiles, more small number tiles than you have larger number tiles. in Sum It Up. How many groups, for example? I guess I'm confused on the question. The tiles come so that you've got all of the tiles for that particular game for Sum It Up. And there's enough to put anywhere from 4 to 6 students around the game. I would encourage less students, 4 if possible. But there's plenty of tiles so that you can play that many students, that many players. Okay, good. I wasn't sure if I answered the question.
All right, so unless someone has any more questions right now, I know there have been some questions throughout just asking if we are recording this, which we are, and we will be sending out a follow-up email with that recording, with the target game, once we get some of that information from Becky on the other games in PDF form or Word form or however she decides. We'll send that out, and then we'll also send a reminder of that 20% discount as well that you guys can use for the next week to purchase Sum It Up if you have it. And actually, it looks like we do have a few more questions coming in. So Mallory is asking, in a classroom for 20 plus kids, how many Sum It Up games do you think would be good?
If you have 20 plus kids, well, it all depends on how you're going to use it. If you're going to use it for centers, there are going to be times where you'll want some of those children sitting with you as students rotate through centers, so you wouldn't need every child at a game board at that given time. But if you're looking to have every child play the game at the same time, you'd probably want 5 copies of the game and put 4 children at each for 20 children. I wouldn't go beyond putting 4 children at each game. Now, if you're going to play this in the classroom, something I've always done to keep students engaged, because if there's 4 children at a game, you've got to wait your turn, and sometimes they get bored waiting. You can do 2 things. First of all, play pairs against pairs so that there's 2 children playing at any given time. And secondly, play this where one pair can say to the other pair, I can earn you more points. So if I'm playing the game and I put my play on the game board, if I'm not the player, if I'm the opposing player, I'm watching and I can say, I can earn you more points. And that player has the opportunity of taking that coaching, if you will. And if they do, they get to earn those more points. And the person who offers the points gets a 10-point bonus added to their score. But in first grade, you may not even be taking score. It's just being a good neighbor. So I would say 5 copies, but feel free to reach out to me. I can share some ways to keep all children involved so that you won't have to worry about the child that's waiting their turn.
Thank you, Becky. It looks like we have 2 more questions, which are kind of the same question. So do you use the tiles from Sum It Up to play the other games, or is each game for sale separately?
All the tiles that I showed you in each of those games came directly from the Sum It Up game. So if you buy Sum It Up, really what you're getting, there's 3 different versions in the box of Sum It Up, but then you can play 5 different games with those tiles. So really each box houses 15 different games. So all the tiles really came from Sum It Up.
Yeah, and they aren't sold separately. But I think, like you've said in the past, Becky, you can easily, create them if you need with, templates of tiles and things like that. So
absolutely,
you can always get creative in that sense. So I think, unless we have more questions come in, I don't think we have any more right now. So if Laura's just asking actually one more question. Are the directions for all the games you shared today in the box?
They are not. However, those directions for the games that I shared today are going to be sent out to you for attending today.
Yep. And if you guys have any more questions for either myself and Didax or Becky, You can always respond to the email you receive. That will be the follow-up with that recorded version. Or you can always reach out to hello@didax.com, and we can always forward the information off to Becky if we can't answer it ourselves. So I think with that, we'll wrap everything up. Becky, do you have anything else you want to add or provide?
No, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are here. I'm assuming that most of you are teachers, so thank you for all you're doing. You've had quite a year, so kudos to you. You've made it.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Becky, and thank you everyone for attending. We are so happy you guys were able to join us today and get some great insight from Becky on new games that you guys can use with your students, both virtually and in the classroom if we get back into those classrooms. Like I said at the beginning and throughout, we are sending that follow-up email. So that will include the recorded version. It will include the game target. It will also include some of those PDF or Word versions of the information for the other games. And it will also include the information for that 20% coupon code that you guys can use to purchase Sum It Up on didax.com. So thank you, Becky. Thank you, everyone. I hope you guys
the drawing for the game. Do you want
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for reminding me. So we are doing the free giveaway. We will just be emailing the winner after the fact. We had a lot of great responses and engagement throughout. So we'll just go through everyone who did engage, and we will email that individual once we have pulled the name. So
signed up through a work account. Yes, we can definitely take care of that.
Yep, we can update that email for sure.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day. Thanks, Becky.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye.